true, I'm nervous, but why do you think I'm mad? My senses are very sharp, and above all, my hearing is extremely acute. Does that make me mad? Listen how calmly I can tell you the whole story. I loved the old man. He never wronged me or insulted me, nor did I desire his gold. I think it was his eye. It resembled a vulture, pale blue, covered with a film. It made my blood run cold, so I made up my mind to take his life. Every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh, so gently. When I had an opening large enough, I put in a lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out. Then I put in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I did it. Very, very slowly, so that I could see him as he lay on his bed. Would a madman have been as wise as this? Then I opened the lantern so that a single ray fell upon the vulture eye. But it was always closed. One night, as I opened the lantern, my thumb slipped on the fastening. The old man sprang up, crying out, "Who's there?" For an hour, I didn't move a muscle. But I didn't hear him lie down. He was sitting up, listening in mortal terror. I opened the lantern so that a single dim ray fell upon the vulture eye. It was wide open. I grew furious as I gazed upon it, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it. So, you see, what you mistake for madness is just over-acuteness of the senses. And now there came to my ears a low, dull sound, such as a watch makes when wrapped in cotton. I knew that sound, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. The beating grew louder and louder. The sound might be heard by a neighbor. With a loud yell, I leaped into the room. He shrieked once. Only once. As I dragged him to the floor and threw the heavy bed over him. For many minutes, the heart beat on, but at length it ceased. The old man was stone dead. Now I took wise precautions to conceal the body. First, I dismembered the corpse, then took 3 planks from the flooring and deposited the remains. I replaced the boards so cleverly that no human eye could detect anything wrong. It was still dark when there came a knocking on the door. I opened it, and 3 policemen entered. The shriek had been heard by a neighbor who called them to investigate. I smiled and bade them welcome and invited them to search. As the room had been restored to perfect order, I had nothing to fear. In my confidence, I brought chairs and asked them to rest, placing my own seat on the very spot beneath which reposed the victim. For a while, I was perfectly at ease, answering questions cheerily. Before long, though, I felt myself getting pale and wished they would leave. My head ached, and a ringing began in my ears, but still they sat and chatted. As the ringing in my ears grew louder, I talked in a louder voice. Now, a new noise came to my ears, the low, dull sound that a watch makes when wrapped in cotton. I gasped for breath and talked more quickly. The noise increased. I rose and argued about trifles, making wild gestures, but the noise grew even louder. I paced the floor. Will they never leave? I felt I must scream or die. Louder, louder, louder! Then I shrieked, "I admit the deed! Tear up the planks! Here! And stop the beating of his hideous old heart!" During a stroll through the countryside, I found myself on the road above a tunnel through which the railroad tracks pass. Down below was a tiny station which was maintained by the signalman who was standing near the great iron bars, which are the means of switching the tracks. I shouted down to him, "Hello down there!" Before he could answer, there was a vibration in the earth which quickly turned into a violent pulsation as a train roared out of the tunnel. As the train disappeared down the tracks, he folded his signal flag and beckoned me to come down. I found my way and joined him at the small building. He looked at me as if he was afraid. When I asked if anything was wrong, he said he thought he might have seen me before. When I asked where, he pointed at the red light at the mouth of the tunnel. I was quite puzzled as I followed him into the little house. Inside, there was a fire, a desk, and a telegraphic instrument, and that was all. I asked what he meant when he pointed to the red light. Instead of answering, he asked a most strange question. What made me call out, "Hello down there"? Why, those exact words. When I asked why those exact words were important, he said he would tell me on our next visit. But please, he said, don't call out. The following night, I returned to the signal station and joined him inside. He told me that he had mistaken me for someone else. When I asked who, he said he didn't know for sure, because the person's left arm is always across his face as he waves violently with his right arm. Then he explained. One moonlight night, I was sitting here when I heard a voice cry out, "Hello down there!" I looked out of the door and saw a person standing by the red light, waving his right arm. The voice seemed quite hoarse as it cried, "Hello down there! Look out! Look out!" I ran to the figure, but just as I got to the place where it was standing, it was gone. I stood there in amazement, listening to the eerie wind blowing through the telegraph wires above me. Within 6 hours, there was news of a horrible crash at the other end of the tunnel. That was a year ago. A few months later, I saw the figure again, and the whole sequence was repeated. Within a few hours, a train came out of the tunnel and stopped at my station. I could hear the terrible cries as the conductor told me that a passenger had just suffered a violent death on board. The figure appeared again last week, but there has been no accident. I fear that this time it will be me. I tried to talk him out of his fear, but was unable to calm him, so I left. I came back the next day to find a train stopped at the little house. I walked up to a group of men and asked what was wrong. The engineer told me that the signalman was killed this morning, cut down by the engine. He had changed the light, but somehow did not jump clear of the oncoming train. The engineer said, "I saw him and blew the whistle. When he didn't react, I waved violently with my right arm as I covered my eyes with my left so that I would not see the disaster about to take place." I had to ask, "What did you actually cry out?" Then he told me his exact words were, "Hello down there! Look out! Look out!"